What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of College Football Game Day Live. I am your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host, Mike Farrell, the godfather of recruiting of Mike Farrell Sports. Mike, we only got a couple of these Saturdays left with a full slate of college football. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I won big on USC last night because I took the theory that Colorado is such a horrible football team and I would laid the 34.5 and won.
I briefly thought about backing Colorado just with how many guys could potentially be out for USC, but Colorado is just so bad. So congratulations for backing that one. Mike and I are going to be with you guys for the next 90 minutes live. We're going to handicap as many games as we can possibly get to on the card, sides, totals, props, the whole gamut as we go along. We're also going to be answering your audience questions as we go. So any bets that you have today, any game that you're interested in, please do write a message in the chat and we will get to it as we go along here. Let's get started, Mike. First game on our docket today. This is one of the weirdest lines I think we saw all season, or not all season, all week on the card. LSU at Arkansas, a game where the line was suspiciously low all week at LSU -3. It looks like now the market is buying in on LSU late this week. This thing has jumped up to 3.5. At some books, it was up to 4. Mike, is this the classic sell high on LSU and buy low on Arkansas, or is this just bet Arkansas or LSU?
I really don't know why. You know, it's a suspicious line. Arkansas has underachieved this year. I think maybe it's because they struggle against the pass. They're not bad against the run, and LSU's bread and butter is run. But it's a confusing line. So when you see a confusing line like that, what do? You assume somebody knows something, and you take Arkansas at home. It's going to be cold. They're coming off a big high home victory over Alabama. They're going to come out a little bit sluggish. Arkansas can run the football, I believe, against LSU. I think it's going to be an ugly game, and I think we're going to see Arkansas at least keep this close. I like the 3 and a hook, and that's why I'm taking Arkansas. If it gets down to 3, I wouldn't touch it, but somebody knows something.
Yeah, number one, KJ Jefferson is banged up. Number two, Arkansas, one of their key guys in the secondary, Miles Slusher, is out for this game after an incident on Sunday morning. He got suspended for it. That makes it tough. Also, I saw Arkansas last week lose to Liberty's third-string quarterback, who not only their third-string quarterback, a guy who hadn't practiced all week long because he had the flu. So that's tough. Like, can Arkansas get off the mat here? I love the point you made about the rushing on both sides. The weaknesses of both defenses are their rushing defenses. Obviously, both these quarterbacks are mobile. I'm looking at the props for both quarterback, the rushing over. As long as you get a decent enough feel that KJ Jefferson's close to 100%, he'll be fine leaving the pocket. But I'm definitely going to be on the over on Jaden Daniels' rushing. I'll also at least look into the overs on the running backs on both sides. LSU, they obviously give so much rushing usage to their quarterback. Arkansas is only down to the one running back because Arkansas is just injury riddled, particularly at running back. It's not a play for me on the side or total. Like the things I'm going to be playing on my own, it's those props that I just talked about. But if I had to lean here, I was leaning Arkansas earlier in the week. I think I'm going to switch my lean in this game to LSU because of some of those inactives that I'm talking about. There was also who had this, maybe Stuckey of Action Network put this out. I want to give credit for where I found this. The idea of the hangover spot here for Brian Kelly and his LSU Tigers coming off that enormous win over Alabama, so enormous that Brian Kelly was getting emotional in the post-game press conference, like a big win for LSU. And so you'd think like the week after, again, like this is your letdown spot, your hangover spot. But Brian Kelly in his career is 18, 12, and 1 in hangover spots. That, again, according to the Action Network. I think Jaden Daniels, who averages 4.5 yards after contact and has broken 37 tackles already this year, he's going to be a real handful for that shoddy Arkansas run defense. And LSU's offensive line has played awesome all year, but I mean they're ascending. I'm gonna lean towards LSU in that one. Mike, our next game, Another interesting one here in Baltimore, Notre Dame traveling to Navy. Notre Dame, Brian Kelly's former school, they are also in a sort of hangover letdown spot here. 1 week after they upset Clemson in monumental fashion. This game has come down to earlier in the week, it was Notre Dame minus 16.5. Then it had gotten down all the way to Notre Dame minus 15. Now it's toggled back up in the market back to that 16.5 number. We're sort of in a dead zone, so I don't think that line movement matters. But Mike, Notre Dame heading to Navy, 16.5 point favorite. Who do you like in this game?
And back to the LSU, you mentioned Jaden Daniels. It's one of the props I have today. His rushing, I mean, he averages over 70 in SEC play, and it's 54.5. So to your point, take Jaden Daniels, and I wouldn't touch the line on that one. I like Navy here. Navy always gives Notre Dame trouble historically. They do well against the spread. They're difficult to defend. They're difficult to prepare for. Not that they're a good football team. I really don't think they're a good football team. But they're 5-0 against the spread against winning teams. They're 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games. They traditionally always give Notre Dame some trouble. Notre Dame is coming off another, it's a hangover game for them as well, coming off a big victory against Clemson. They're going to beat Navy. There's no doubt in my mind, but maybe by 10 points, not by 17.
Yeah, the amount of points that you're getting here in this game, that's what, you start thinking about Navy there, because to Mike's point, it's really hard to beat a team like Navy by margin, even when they're bad. Obviously the triple option and everything like that. But I also think, not only is this a hangover spot for Notre Dame, I also think Navy, for a team that is catching over 2 touchdowns, they match up exceedingly well on the field in this game. Big part of the reason for that is Notre Dame's defense, where the strength of it's their secondary and their pass defense. Those, you want to play against Notre Dame against teams where it's going to affect them, taking away their passing game or severely clamping down on it. Navy isn't going to test that. Well, maybe they'll test it twice, like literally. But that thing, the Notre Dame pass defense is going to wither on the vine here. Notre Dame's run defense is not very good. It's not good in the stuff rate stuff, the opportunity rate stuff, the efficiency stuff, everything that Navy's or I shouldn't say the only things that Navy's offense are good at, Notre Dame's defense struggles at. So I do think that Navy's going to be able to stay on schedule with their triple option offense. And then you flip the field the other way. Navy's defense is basically the opposite of Notre Dame's in that its struggles are athleticism on the perimeter. Navy just doesn't have it. They get shredded by the high octane passing attacks because they just don't have the horses in the stable to be able to defend that. What Navy is good at, probably because they practice against it every day, it's the run fill stuff, the run gap stuff. They can keep opponents that run all the time off of schedule. Right. I mean, like the gap integrity, stuff like that, and the tackle success rate. Teams that run a lot sort of go into what Navy is already good at. I think Navy is going to be able to, at least effectively enough to stay within this number, hinder the Notre Dame rushing offense. Notre Dame now is running at one of the highest clips of the Power 5 teams. Having gone to Drew Pine. And then when they throw it to Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer should get his yards here. Absolutely.
Yeah. No props, man. No individual props on this one. I was looking at that Michael Mayer number and it just doesn't exist.
That would have been the interesting one here, I think. But like if they had Notre Dame receiver ones, stuff like that would have been interesting. But I think I'd be going under on the Notre Dame rushing here, just because of the reasons that I stated. I do respect Navy's run defense in that letdown spot for Notre Dame coming off the Clemson game. I'm going to back Navy getting the points. It's an official play for me. It's in my column.
Me too. Interesting one. There is plus 100 Navy over 11.5 points in this game.
Oh, I would take that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an intriguing, side bet to take there because I think they can reach 13, 14 points.
I like that one, Mike. I like that you pointed that one out. Yeah, because I feel like just the rushing utility, of Navy against that shoddy Notre Dame front and their run defense, I feel like you're going to get 2 touchdowns there. Like, I just do. Like, that number feels really, really low to me. moving to our last game of the morning slate before we get into audience questions. So if you guys have any questions out there, type them in. We'll get to the first batch here in 1 second. Mike, an interesting situational spot in this one. Alabama's heading to Ole Miss. This number's dropped all the way to Alabama minus 11.5 in the marketplace. It was 13.5 earlier in the week, and then it was 13 for the longest of times. And I think it was yesterday on Friday when the numbers started to jump down. And then it was at 12, and now it's at 11.5. Maybe that started on Thursday. But it seems like we're getting some late money in here on Mississippi. We have a total in this game of 64.5 today in Oxford. Mike, do you have an angle in this game?
Yeah. So I like Ole Miss here. I mean, they're at home. Kiffin knows Saban. Kiffin's been buttering him up all week. I know you saw
Twitter. Yeah.
the Feinbaum stuff and the goat fuel. And, he was very, very interesting on Feinbaum yesterday, I thought, in talking about this game and how you can't count out Nick Saban. Nick Saban does what he wants to do. Nick Saban wins what he wants to. Now, this is a dangerous football team to play. You don't really want to play Alabama coming off a loss. That's never fun. But I think if there's a team equipped to do it, it's Ole Miss because of their rushing attack, because of how balanced they are, not only with the running backs, but with, Jackson Dart being able to run the football. And I think they'll be able to stay in this football game, control the clock a bit, and hit that number. I don't think they're going to win, but you give me that many points, whether it's 11.5 or 12.5 at home in the SEC, I'll take it. I do have a prop on this one too. Jahmyr Gibbs, his receiving yards, I believe, is 38.5 right now. He's going to go over that. They're going to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs in the passing game here quite a bit, in my opinion. It's 36.5, actually. He only got 23 touches against LSU. He's had less touches in games this year, but not in games they needed to win. But I think they're going to go back to the drawing board and say, listen, this guy's got to touch the ball, especially in the passing game, a little bit more, because Ole Miss isn't great in space. So hammer Gibbs 36.5, but take Ole Miss to cover.
I'm with you on this one, Mike. Yeah, I've been all over Ole Miss all week. I have a Ole Miss plus 13 ticket, even at 11.5 where it is now. I'm taking those points with Ole Miss. Classic deflation spot for Alabama. After last week, they took their second loss. All their season goals are gone now, and we have to talk about the Alabama travel thing. This has been sort of a theme since the start of the season because Alabama was so bad on the road last year against the spread. And now you've tacked on the results of this year. That sample's starting to get bigger where you have to note it when Alabama's on the road. I'm speaking specifically to Alabama's 2-6 against the spread on the road in their 8 road games since the beginning of last year. This one, not only is this a deflation spot, Alabama's on back-to-back travel. So not just a road game, but the back-to-back travel thing accelerates that a little bit after last week. Of course, you lost in Baton Rouge on Saturday night. Mike, you were talking about the Ole Miss, their rushing game. I think it's a great point. Alabama, their front seven against the run this year has been underachieving relative to recent expectation. The Rebels, meanwhile, they rank 13th in rushing success rate on offense. They rank 15th in PPA and 16th in rushing explosiveness. The Alabama offense has also underachieved, mainly because their offensive line is down. Their receiving core is down. They have the awesome quarterback and the awesome running back, like you were mentioning, Mike, in Jahmyr Gibbs. The reason that Mike's prop angle of Jahmyr Gibbs is a sage one is because so often Bryce Young has to defer to the running back in the passing game because his receivers either struggle to get separation or when they do, Young hits them on the hands and it clangs off and hits the turf.
Yeah, they're bad.
They're bad. Yeah, the guys they went out and tried to get, it just hasn't worked out. Jermaine Burton hasn't been as good as we thought. Harrell, the kid they got from Louisville, Harrell hasn't been healthy all year. Yeah. It's just been tough for them. And I do think the Gibbs, he's going to get a couple explosive plays here. The Tide, their offense, what it struggled at all year, it's with the efficiency stuff, in part because of this and moving the chains. But the explosive element is still there with the Tide offense. They're fifth in explosiveness in rushing and eighth explosiveness in the passing, which that one goes to Bryce Young. the Rebels defense, I feel like, lines up decently well against that as well, in that the thing that the Rebels defense struggles with, it's the efficiency stuff. I think even though the Rebels have the 31st SP plus defense, they're only 78th in success rate, which is pretty bad for that. But what they're really good at, the reason that they're that high, they take away explosive plays. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of the push or pull of that. But I do think the Ole Miss defense matches up okay against this Alabama offense that's a little bit down. Alabama's 1-3 against the spread at Ole Miss over the last 10 years, compounding the road thing that we potentially talked about. Even though Ole Miss has been struggling at the window in recent weeks, I trust them in this spot. Lane Kiffin, who you were talking about, is 2-1 against the spread in his career against Nick Saban. 1-1 at Ole Miss, but 2-1 overall.
Alabama's 3-7 against the spread against Mississippi in the last 10 meetings. This is my buddy Chife came up with this number. 3-7 in the last 10 meetings against Ole Miss, home or away. They have trouble covering the number. The over is also intriguing here. I assume your adjusted over is higher than what we're seeing, because the over goes, it happens all the time in this football game as well.
It is.
So if you want to parlay, and we all love parlaying, maybe take Ole Miss to cover and the over here, and look for a bit of a shootout, despite the fact that both teams have struggled, with the receivers. I still think they're going to put up points, because I don't think either team could stop the other one running the ball.
Agreed. Yeah, my adjusted total on the game is 71. To your point, in the market right now, it's 64.
Live number. So
yeah, and that one's even toggling up a little bit. So it looks like that's the side.
And they got one more on this too. Quinshon Judkins, the great freshman.
Oh, stud!
Great freshman.
Stud.
But his numbers under 100.5. I would hammer the under on that one. I'm not going to rely on a freshman to go over 100.5 when they spread the wealth. They've got Zach Evans, Dart takes away rushes. Take the under on that one if you want to prop there.
Judkins has been, at least for me, Mike, obviously I'm not nearly into recruiting like the godfather of recruiting, but Judkins, I was not prepared for Judkins to be a stud like this. Did you see this coming with him out of high school?
No.
Like what?
No. I mean, not to this level. I mean, for a kid like that, 6 foot, 210 pounds, to jump right in, and they had 2 transfers. I mean, Zach Evans, you thought, Ulysses Bennett, you thought, he was a high 3-star kid from Alabama that Alabama didn't even really want. I didn't see this coming, and there's a great picture that Lane Kiffin put up of him sitting in the stands alone, no one around, at a game at Pike Road High School, which is not exactly a school that produces a bunch of talent. And he was there to show his face to Quinshon Judkins, and it's paid off.
It sure has, and immediate dividends. I credit to Lane, who all off season he was the portal king for also sort of moneyballing the recruiting aspect on the high school side. I don't know how he found a kid like that fell under the radar to that degree, who was this good immediately, but credit to them.
Yep.
We're gonna hop to audience questions here if we got any.
Dumpster dive. We're gonna dumpster dive.
Oh wait, Mike, you got to grab the first one because I got off the page with the questions.
So this is Mike Huseman, our dumpster diver, right?
Oh yes, so let's go.
He's coming in with a dead cat bounce alert. Fresh off the firing of Jeff Scott. Do you think USF can show signs of life and cover 17.5 against SMU? And my answer is simply absolutely not. No way.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you're out on the dead cat bounce.
USF's a horrible football team. I like Jeff Scott. I think he's a great fit back at Clemson as their offensive coordinator. Maybe we could fix some of those offensive problems. But it's a really bad football team. I don't think you're going to get that bump that we talked about in firing your coach. I just don't see it. And SMU's coming off scoring 150 points. They're going to run it up on USF.
We didn't have Lee Corso this morning on game day, so I'm going to give you your taste of Lee Corso right now. Not so fast, my friend.
Okay.
Before the games leading up to when the schools that have fired their head coaches, they were, so I'm talking about Nebraska, Arizona State, Georgia Tech, Wisconsin, Colorado, Charlotte, Auburn. Those teams were 8-28 against the spread. And then they fired their head coach. The week after, those teams were 5-2 against the spread with 3 outright upsets as 14.5 points or more underdogs. In this one last week, Mike, I happened to watch the entire game of USF against Temple because I was on Temple. I had a couple different tickets on Temple, but I also had 2 of their guys in my 50-team college fantasy football lineup, and we're in the playoffs. Like I had Edward Sadie and their receiver Ahmad Anderson Jr. So I needed
that is self-loathing right there, by the way.
Oh, but it was a great time, Mike. I mean, Temple just smacked him around. And Temple, for one day, they looked like the greatest show on turf. They were running tempo. Edward Sadie, nobody could block him. He was like Christian Okoye for one day. It was just absolutely fabulous. And now you're wondering, like, that game was going on around the same time as SMU was dropping 77 points on Houston. Now, they also gave up, 61 or 62 or something like that, or 63 in that game. They did get ripped on defense, but I mean, SMU was looking great. So you're wondering in this game, how can I possibly bet on USF? I'll tell you why. Dead cap bounce is number one. This USF team, we know that they have talent, even though at the end, these last couple games they just weren't giving any effort at all. But earlier this season, they gave Florida a run for their money and one other decent team, but they almost beat Florida. I'm blanking on the other one right now. But you have that. I think this sets up as a little bit of a letdown spot for SMU coming off of or at least we're super tired game coming off of that track meet against Houston where the 140 points or whatever were scored. And then the other part of it is the only thing that you can sort of hang your hat on the USF side. They have a good rushing attack and it's explosive. They got Brian Batty and then a couple guys behind him. They do generate the long runs, and they're okay with efficiency as well. The SMU run defense is atrocious. We have seen that over and over and over again this year. I think that's the sort of the path for USF putting up the 24 points that they're going to need in this game to end up covering this number. And SMU also has injuries in the backfield that I should mention as well. They've been getting by so far, but we'll see if the lack of depth there ends up hurting them. Okay, was that the only? Okay.
So far,
we're going to jump back into the afternoon games here, but keep asking your questions, guys, in the chat, and we will get to them a couple more times in the show next time, right after we get done with these afternoon games. So, Mike, heading into the 3:30 Eastern slot today, we're going to kick this one off with Iowa State traveling to Oklahoma State. Iowa State is a 1.5-point favorite in the market now. It was at 1 for most of the week. Now it's gone up to 1.5 on the Iowa State side. It seems like we have not gotten the good news that some were hoping for on the Oklahoma State side with the status reports on some of their injured players. We can talk about that in a second. We got a total on this game in Stillwater today of 48.5. Mike, do you have an angle on this game?
Yeah, the angle is that Oklahoma State is just an absolute disappointment to me in every way, shape, or form. Ever since Spencer Sanders has been injured, they've been just an awful football team, a football team that anybody can beat. I just don't believe in them. I mean, they got hammered in the last 2 games by both of the teams in Kansas. I told you last week that Kansas wasn't going to cover and win that football game, and they trounced them. I'm out on Oklahoma State. I think they've given up on this season. And that's just it's a recency type of bias. There's not a lot of data here that shows that Iowa State should win this football game, and this is essentially a pick 'em. But I like Iowa State, and I like the under. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring football game, and every time Iowa State seems to play, whether it's conference, out of conference, the under comes in. So maybe hit the under a little bit harder than Iowa State, but don't touch Oklahoma State in any fashion.
Yeah, Matt Campbell likes to muck it up, right? And in this game, he should be able to. It doesn't look like we're going to see Spencer Sanders. I haven't seen official word on that today, but we don't get official word from Oklahoma State ever in advance. That's not the way that Mike Gundy rolls. Like he's one of the biggest obfuscators in the sport. But I think you got some indications from Mike Gundy this week, more sort of overt than we've gotten in the past in the lead up, in that he was perfectly willing to talk with reporters about his plan if Spencer Sanders wasn't playing. So he was at least willing to go into the hypotheticals this time more deeply. And he was comparing his son Gunner and then the Rangel kid. He was comparing them to when he was platooning what was it, J.W. Welsh and Clint Shelf back in the day, which I thought was like, that is a deep cut, on that side. But he was at least talking about that. He was also talking about the potential future without Spencer Sanders. He was fielding questions about, is Spencer going to come back next year? Is he not? You usually don't sort of go there unless maybe he's out for the rest of the regular season.
I think he's done for the year. I think
he might be. Yeah, and that's the rumors that we have heard. I mean, they've been sort of swirling. There's been sort of smoke around this. We'll see on that. I haven't gotten an official confirmation, of course. This is just rumors. But based on those rumors plus the tea leaf reading, at least for this game, I don't think we're going to see him. So you're going to see Gundy potentially platooning in, Gundy's son, platooning in off the bench for this Rangel kid who Gundy unexpectedly started out of nowhere over his son. We'll see how that goes over at Thanksgiving dinner. But in the last two games, to Mike's point, Oklahoma State has gotten their butt kicked in both of them. The combined score, it was like 85 to 16 in the last two games against Kansas State and KU. At least now Oklahoma State can turn around and play at home. Both those games were on the road. But unfortunately for them, not only is Sanders hurt, you still have all those injuries that we talked about in recent weeks. Running back room decimated, wide receiver room decimated. Offensive line has been picked apart by injuries. The secondary has been picked apart by injuries. At a certain point, it just becomes too much. And it seems like it went over that Rubicon to where, again, to Mike's point, where it started to affect the team's mindset or the team's effort or their desire, however you want to sort of quantify that. But speaking as someone that watched that entire Oklahoma State against Kansas game, what was striking to me, it wasn't only, we're seeing sort of the B team for Oklahoma State. It also seemed like they didn't really have their heart in it, especially initially when that game kicked off. Oklahoma State on their very first two drives threw interceptions. KU was already running away with that thing before you'd even sort of popped your popcorn and sat down with your beer. The game was already getting away from Oklahoma State. And I just didn't see that fight in them. From the guys coming up, the young kids coming up to on the depth chart to play, or the vets that were still in there, the pride. I agree with you, Mike. I think there's an enormous fork sticking out of the back of Oklahoma State right now. We'll see later on if that changes at all. But I think you have the opposite amount of motivation on the Iowa State game. You have a huge discrepancy. Iowa State is 4-5. They need to win 2 of their last 3 games to go bowling again under Matt Campbell, something that they have become accustomed to doing. They have Texas Tech and TCU coming. You must win this game if you want to go bowling. I don't see Iowa State beating both Texas Tech and TCU, but if you win this game, now it's probably the favorite outcome for you to go bowling between having, getting 2 cracks to only need 1 at the end of that one. I like Iowa State to win this game. So we are in agreement on that one.
And I honestly think it's embarrassing at this level with the transfer portal I didn't realize how important Spencer Sanders was to this football team, but for them to have no discernible backup option. I mean, one's a freshman and one's your son. They might as well go Wildcat. They'd have a better chance of winning this football game if they went Wildcat.
I think I mean, after watching last week, I think I might agree with that. And we'll see if they have any more wrinkles in there, but yeah, they have just been the last 2 games. They brought knife to a gunfight. I guess would be the cliche you'd use. It's been bad. Gundy has to figure out a way to manufacture offense to even have a shot here. And of course, Iowa State has a super tough defense as is, just in a vacuum. We're both taking Iowa State in that one. Moving to our next game at this one we're jumping to 4 p.m. Eastern. South Carolina traveling to Florida. Florida is an 8.5-point favorite in the market right now. We have a total on this game of 58.5. Mike, in this SEC tilt, do you have an angle on this one?
Yeah, this is the Spurrier Bowl, right? Is this what we're calling this?
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know, man. I like South Carolina. Getting that many points. This Florida team is very difficult to gauge. I really don't know what I'm going to see from Anthony Richardson. He starts off the season great against Utah, then he falls and looks horrible and looks like an undrafted free agent. Then the last couple of games he starts to put it together a little bit, but his passes still are not precise. He's still making some reads that are wrong. The rushing game is solid. But I really do like South Carolina to sort of stay in this game. They do well against the spread. They're 5-0 in their last 5 meetings against the spread in this particular matchup. They play Florida well, it seems, every year. Every number I have points to them covering this. If it was 6, I'd be maybe singing a different tune. But you give me 8, I'm taking South Carolina to win, to at least cover. They're not going to win, but I think they're going to cover 8.
Yeah, it's big for South, and I agree with you. It's big for South Carolina getting back Marshawn Lloyd in this game. Their stud running back who missed the last time out. Shane Beamer came out really early this week. I think it was on Tuesday, and told the media Marshawn's 100%. Marshawn returned to practice, full participant today. Marshawn will be playing on Saturday. It's huge for them, not only because he's the best thing they got going for them on offense, but also because the worst thing on the Florida side, their run defense is awful with a capital A. If you have even a competent rushing offense, you're going to be able to move the ball on the ground against Florida. Marshawn Lloyd is one of the hardest running backs in America to touch. He's just so shifty. He's going to get his yards against that. He's going to break a bunch of tackles as well. Florida's run defense ranks 116th in success rate and 80th in explosiveness. So both those are going to be there. Meanwhile, the other side of the ball, Florida's entire offense, it's built on fishing for the explosive plays, both in the running game and in the passing game. But the way that they're number 2 in marginal explosiveness, Florida, but the way that you beat South Carolina's defense, it's with the efficiency, the long sustained drives. That's what they will give up. You can nick South Carolina's defense with paper cuts the whole game. The thing that they take away from you, it's the explosive plays. It's the way that defense is built. So they're going to force Florida in this game we're not going to give you those super long plays. That's not how you're going to score here. We will allow you to efficiently and methodically move the ball up the field. Well, that's against the MO of the Florida offense, which ranks 93rd in success rate. On the other side, it's with South Carolina. They rank 115th in defensive success rate, but they're number 7 in the marginal explosiveness. So again, taking away those explosive plays. The last point I wanted to make is South Carolina has now, and Mike, I know that you'll love this, the blast from the past. South Carolina has now fully not only embraced Beamer ball, they have become Beamer ball. South Carolina has the number 1 SP plus special teams in the nation, and they have for a while now. What that means is not only could they steal some extra points on the special teams, I think it also speaks to what I was talking about Florida's offense against South Carolina's defense and how Florida needs to methodically move the ball up the field. In this game against that awesome special teams, Florida, not only that, but they're going to be starting further back on the field for these methodical drives they need to go on. I don't think this is a good matchup for Florida. I like South Carolina, and I think they're a live dog in that one.
You like money line here?
I think, yeah, I'm going to have a little bit on that money line. Yeah, as well.
Let me see what it is. It's a pretty neat money line. I was looking at it. I think it's plus 225 or something like that. So,
and this
plus
is one
plus 270. That's it's worth a little bit of money, right?
If you simulated this game out 100 times, South Carolina is going to win more than 25% of them. So by definition, I believe you're getting value on that. That might be if we get a question about throwing together a ridiculous parlay again, that one might be in mine because I love taking the ones where you have a little bit of the bigger dog, whether it's high single digits or low double digits. I did one last week. I forgot the team where they were like an 11-point underdog, but they won. And then it was, it was like a 6-team parlay or whatever. So I had super juiced odds on that, but this one would be a possibility for that. Getting to our next one, and we'll go through 2 more afternoon games, and then we'll get to audience questions. So if you guys have any, please type them in to the chat, and we'll get to them in a sec. Mike, the biggest G5 game on the board today, and one that could potentially affect the New Year's 6 bowl games. That's where Tulane right now is projected to be. UCF traveling to Tulane. Tulane in this game is a 1.5-point favorite. And in the marketplace, the total right now in this game is 54.5. Mike, which side do you like in this one?
Yeah, it's -1 now. Okay. So it's toggling a little bit here. Tulane has been a team this season consistently that you can make money on, and it goes back. Obviously, we talked about what was it, the K-State game, 100, what seems like 100 weeks ago.
Yeah.
From there, they're 5-1 in their last 6 games at home. They're 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games. They're 4-0 in their last 4 games following covering the spread. So, I mean, sometimes you bet a team to cover the spread and you're like, you shouldn't ride this out. 7-0 against the spread in their last 7 conference games. 5-0 against the spread against teams with winning record. I mean, just everything speaks to Tulane being a team where you can make money off of this season. Now, again, we can get into the football X's and O's and the matchups and all that stuff. Tulane's a very, very good football team. They're playing efficient football. They're not making a lot of mistakes. But pointing to those numbers, they reek to me of a team that you get on their back and ride them all season long and make some money. So I've got Tulane.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup in that both these defenses are feisty and both the offenses can do stuff. Just diving into the on-field stuff. Tulane, their defense, their pass defense is really good. They're top 10 in the nation in their coverage grade. They also have top 20 success rate and explosiveness in passing downs on defense. The UCF offense, they obviously don't pass it as much. Assuming that John Rice now I can call him Rice. I was always doing the Reese, and that
Reese is fine.
Yeah,
he's not good enough to care, honestly.
It's interesting because I mean, like to go away from that Tulane pass defense, you want Rice Plumlee back in the game even more because UCF skews even more run heavily when he's in. Mikey Keene is maybe even a more effective passer than Rice Plumlee, but certainly not the runner. The Tulane defense, again, it takes away the pass. Tulane's offense has been good at passing, but they're a run-first operation. Central Florida, their quarterbacks aren't going to be under duress from the Tulane defense. So, I mean, if Rice Plumlee is coming back in this one off of an injury, he doesn't have to worry about the heat coming in off the edge. This is a really, really tough one for me. It's one where I literally think it could go either way. I'm absolutely not betting on it personally, but the play that I would lean towards here would be the under, because I do think that both of the opposing defenses can address things again that the opposing offenses do. There's going to be a lot of running in this game. Both these teams are run heavy. UCF in particular, when Rice Plumlee is starting, we expect him to in this game coming off the concussion. That's sort of the tea leaf reading has sort of been pointing that direction. We'll have to see though for sure. But you know that, and then of course, like I said, Tulane is also run first. Even though Michael Pratt's been great this year, they're sort of led by their running foot and the stud Tyjae Spears and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go the under. Mike is on Tulane in that one.
I'm on Tulane, but the under is a good call because these are the two best defenses in the American Conference. I mean, they don't give up. Neither team gives up more than 20 points. So if you're looking at that and you want to, mesh those numbers together, and that doesn't always work, but in this game, to your point, they like to run the ball. I think they're both going to play a little bit tight, which is, because it's a big game, especially for Tulane. I think this is going to be one where they make a couple of mistakes they don't usually make, and I think it's going to keep it to a low score. So I would hit the under too. I just those numbers for Tulane. Man, I mean, if I had known this at the beginning of the season, I would have made a lot of money. So I'm just going to keep riding it.
Yeah, Michael Pratt for Tulane needs to come up big here. This could be an interesting game for his NFL evaluation because, again, Tulane, they still lean run first. Remember, it's Willie Fritz coaching them. That's a guy who, he comes from the triple option school. Now, he's evolved his offense, to get to this point or whatever. But UCF, their best thing is erasing the running game. And so where Tulane usually leans into that run game, and I do expect them to, to still be doing that circumstantially, at least initially. What they're going to need to do to win Tulane is throw the ball effectively here. So a very big game for Michael Pratt. But the clock's going to be running because we're going to get a lot of rushing plays on both sides against solid defenses. Last afternoon game, we're going to talk about guys, and then we're going to get into your audience questions. So type in any that you have. Louisville, Mike, is traveling to Clemson. Clemson, a 7-point favorite in the market still. This is a line where in the offseason, this thing would have been closer to 2 touchdowns, right? But Clemson not playing as well recently, now only favored by 7 at home in Death Valley. We have a over-under on this game of 52.5, kickoff of 3:30 Eastern. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like Clemson. I mean, I know their season's over, but Dabo's not going to let them believe that. The loss to Notre Dame was very disappointing. They're a one-loss team. They can still win the ACC, and that's the goal now. They could still find their way into the playoff if a bunch of craziness happens. But this is a prideful program. This is a prideful coach. And Louisville does not play well or match up well against Clemson historically. They just don't. They always lose, and often they lose big. The line is low. I mean, this game, as you mentioned, is usually it's a 10-plus point line for Clemson, whether it's home or away. So if you're telling me I can lay 7 for Clemson, a team that traditionally just throttles Louisville, I'm going to take Clemson.
Yeah, so I'm going to lean towards the total, part of this one. I'm going to take the over in it. I've liked some of the stuff that I've been seeing from the Louisville offense, and I do think that Clemson is going to get their points here. My adjusted total on that game is 58.5. Like I said in the market right now, it's 52.5. I think that there's a little bit of value there. As far as this side, this one's hard for me because it's like, do you believe your lion eyes, or do you believe sort of what you know from the past? Recent history of what we've seen of both these teams, it would suggest that getting 7 points with Louisville is the right play, right? I mean, Louisville has won 4 straight. They've won in these sort of different circumstances. They've won convincingly, repeatedly. Their defense has been the surprising thing on the Louisville side. That was one where, like, heading into the season, I was actually bullish on Louisville. The Louisville over, I think it was at 6.5. That was one of, I think I gave out 131 over-unders, like on in the off season at work with betting pros. But, personally, I only bet, I think 12 of them. And the Louisville over was one of them, in part because I like the offense, but also because I thought the defensive holes that they had last year, the weaknesses that Satterfield had addressed them in the transfer portal over the summer. But then Jermaine Lowell gets knocked out for the season right away. The defense looks like crap initially. There was the Syracuse no-show, and Louisville just started out so horrid. But ever since, it's like something changed. They figured something out, and the defense has been playing so much better. That's been leading them now. And, they still have the interesting offense, but now they can hold down opposing offenses. Clemson, obviously, like you go back into Mike, you're mentioning, like you go back into the historical numbers, it would absolutely point at Clemson. But you look at any of the recent stuff or what you've seen on Clemson on the TV screen, you're like, I don't know if I really want to bet Clemson. After you watch them get smoked by Notre Dame or just sort of narrowly squeak out some of these different games. It's hard for me to make a referendum on the side for all these reasons. It's just like, are we going to get is the real Clemson going to finally show up, or is this just who they are? And the same thing with Louisville, like the team that we've seen the last 4 weeks, are they going to keep getting better and better and better? So I'm just going to lean with the total on this one, and I'm going to go over. We're going to answer y'all's questions now. Okay. So we have first one is from our buddy Mike Hughesman, asks us, NC State against Boston College, can the Wolfpack cover 18 points with MJ Morris at the helm? Well, I saw this morning, it was like, right after I was getting up, that Phil Jerkovac is going to be out for this game. They've already confirmed that. So we're going to get Emmett Moorhead again on the Boston College side. The one sort of silver lining for Boston College is, going back to my 50-team college fantasy football team, I have Zay Flowers. He's like one of my studs on that team. And every single week, I'm looking at the Boston College beat reporters to get any indication that Zay – I don't want Zay Flowers to opt out, right? Like, I mean, at this point in the season with where this thing is going, and now he's already accepted his Shrine Game invitation, which that was interesting too, that Zay Flowers chose the Shrine Game, but that's a story for another day. You wonder, like, is he going to pull the plug on his season early? But we have gotten no indications about that. So they should have their big play receiver, but Boston College got to go with the backup quarterback. Mike mentioned in here, Mike did ask the question, NC State starting MJ Morris now over Jack Chambers, since they lost Devin Leary. That's been a move that's turned out well for them. It raised the cap of their ceiling quite a bit, and they've been playing better on offense, arguably as well as they were when Leary was the quarterback. Mike, do you have any thoughts on this game?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Oh, let's hear them.
I grew up a Boston College fan, as you know. The loss to UConn was probably the low point for BC that I can remember. And that's going back to the 80s when Flutie was, a fourth-string quarterback or starting. I did a little digging as to why they've had 9 different offensive line combinations this season for BC. They've had 5 offensive linemen with surgeries out. They're playing, their entire front 5 are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. They have no experience on this football team whatsoever. The other number, 23 players in there too deep on offense and defense are freshmen or redshirt freshmen. This is a brand new football team. This is a football team that in a couple of years might be one to worry about. It's not one to worry about now. Zay Flowers, I don't think is going to opt out. That's just not who he is. Just knowing him through the recruiting process and a little bit through BC, he's going to be there. But it doesn't matter. I did like what I saw from the freshman quarterback last week. He was good, but this team can't sustain anything. They're just too young. They were too banged up. There's too many guys missing. This is a team ripe for the taking by NC State to win by 30. I mean, there's just no way they're going to cover that line, I don't believe. And I should have done this research before the UConn game, but I thought there's no way on earth they could lose to UConn. Just how is that possible? But now that I know, 9 different O-line combinations and 5 different guys out for surgery on the O-line, they have no offensive line. They might as well put me out there right now. So take NC State.
Yeah, it's been tough with the offensive line. I think so. My adjusted line on this game is NC State minus 18.1. So it's sort of in line with where the market is on it. I might sort of as a contrarian type lean here. I think I would lean towards the over, which, like you've seen some of these scenes in the past, you might be like, oh, why? But for me, where that line is right now was in the low 40s. Last time I seen it, it was 41.5. My adjusted total on this game is 45.5.
41 now, right now.
41. Yeah. Like, I think on both sides, the MJ Morris thing, again, it raised the ceiling of that NC State offense, and it's arguably gotten them back to around where they were with Leary. That offense played way down when the Jack Chambers, the veteran backup noodle arm scrambler kid, when he was playing. But now with Morris, again, that thing has risen up. And with Boston College, you can at least in this game count on the explosive plays. We already talked about Zay Flowers, but also in the running game, even though their running game isn't efficient whatsoever, they do occasionally rip off the explosive runs. So I do think that Boston College is going to get at least a few touchdowns off of those. And I expect NC State's offense to be on schedule the whole game because I'm starting to trust that Morris kid a little bit more. So I think that's where my lean would be on that one. Our next one is Mike Lukovitz asks us, do we like Mike likes asking us the questions about the Adrian Martinez rushing pride. I think we had one of these in the past. He asked us, do we like the Adrian Martinez over rushing yard prop today at 55.5 against Baylor, correct?
Yeah, that's Baylor. Yeah. I don't like that number. I like Adrian Martinez, and I think we have that game to talk about, right?
Yep.
Hold on. Autoplay. I haven't figured out a way to stop autoplay. I even researched it, Googled it, and there's no way to stop ESPN. It's an unstoppable force of autoplay videos. I even set my settings to stop autoplay and video. It won't stop.
I love how your autoplay, it always puts us in a rave for a second.
Yeah, it's Target, man. It's like woohoo. But ESPN is an unstoppable force. You cannot stop autoplay. The number, if it was a little bit lower, if it was in the Bo Nix range, the 34.5 range, I would go with that. Or if he was as important to the offense as Jaden Daniels was for LSU, like their leading rusher and all that stuff. But I don't like that 55.5. I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't say under or over. I just don't like that number at all.
Yeah, I sort of agree with Mike where it's hard with where that number is. Last 2 games, of course, one of them he was injured, so you almost toss out the TCU one again. But against Texas, he had 52 last week, 14 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown. The 4 games before that, he would have gone over the total on every one. Iowa State, he had 77, 171 before that, 148, 59. First 2 games he didn't. It's tough with where I do think he's going to perform better than he has this season. It's in the passing game because Baylor's secondary stinks. You can throw on Baylor. I do think that Deuce Vaughn, he's going to get his yards both rushing and carrying.
Right, that's the thing. Man,
at the 55.5, that's
a bad number.
Yeah, for me, honestly, it would be a stay away because I think it's a good number, right? It's sharp. So it's
a very, very smart number.
Yeah, so it's you're flipping a coin on that one.
It's a smart number if you want to lose money. Stay away from it.
Then let's see, the last one we got here is Mike Huseman says the above game was involving 2 Power 5 teams. So Farrell, he said that you can't say he's dumpster diving this time because it was 2 Power 5s.
USF. I mean, well, first of all, NC State versus BC. I mean, BC is not a Power 5 program. They're 2-7 and they're awful. And like I just mentioned, they're pretty much a JV team. So whatever, Mike. It's still dumpster diving. You know, let's have an Ole Miss Alabama question.
Well,
I
got to talk about USF, so I'm happy. And going right along, we'll get into the Kansas State Baylor game here in just 1 second. But we did want to thank first our title sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Create a new DraftKings Sportsbook account today using the promo code CFBPros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more and get a free $50 bet. Free $50 bet with a minimum $5 deposit using that promo code CFBPros. So thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook, and please take advantage of their offer. It's a good one. Mike, quick
question. Did you hit the Josh Jacobs pristine auction read yet?
What's that?
The Josh Jacobs pristine auction read.
Oh, we got another read.
Yeah. So if you want a chance to win a signed Josh Jacobs Las Vegas Raiders jersey, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to Betting Pros YouTube channel right now. Comment below on this video right here, and that's it. And then you turn on notifications to know when new videos drop and find out if you've won. I like Pristine Auction. I like Josh Jacobs, jerseys. I like helmets better, but that's a pretty cool deal. I mean, all you have to do is subscribe and comment.
Yeah, we got to figure out if we're eligible, Mike. I think people might raise an eyebrow if we won, but that would be dope.
Next week with a Raiders jersey, Josh Jacobs.
And
we'll question that a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I'm wearing the signed helmet on the show, and you got one of the jerseys on, and we're like, no, it's just a coincidence. But we were talking right before we were doing the question. We were talking about the Kansas State Baylor game. That's the first game on the docket for us with the night games. This one is a 7:00 Eastern kickoff. So let's get into the handicap right now, Mike. Baylor is a 2.5-point favorite in the market in Waco today, with a total of this game of 52.5. What's your angle on this one?
And we talked about Adrian Martinez. I think he's going to have a good game throwing the football, which is not his forte. But Baylor's secondary is so bad that I think he's going to make hay there. I think, Deuce Vaughn's going to have a very good game.
Yes.
In the passing game too. I mean, that's intriguing to me because, he's going to run the ball, but they're going to use him as a receiver because Baylor can't tackle anybody in the open field, it seems. And the numbers speak to this. K-State matches up well against Baylor. They're 6-0 against the spread in their last 6 meetings. I like K-State to cover this, even though they've kind of disappointed me with this up and down Z stuff. But I do like them. I like them to cover.
So I'm gonna lean towards the other way, towards Baylor here. I've liked the way the Baylor's offense has been playing in recent weeks. I think it's a solid matchup for both of the offenses, to be honest. I think both of them are going to be able to run effectively here. I totally agree with your take, Mike, that Deuce Vaughn, he's going to pile up the yard. I mean, he does every week, but again, this is a good matchup for him, both running the ball and I think, leaking out of the backfield as a receiving option. Whereas with Baylor, I think their offensive success has snuck up on people, right? And people need to start realizing this because the Baylor overbet has become automatic. It's covered in 6 straight games. I have a buddy who just blind bets the over in Baylor games every single week. Yep. And he said, I'm going to do this until this stops hitting. But Baylor has averaged 39.5 points per game in their last 4. And again, the totals keep flying over.
They do. And in this game, Kansas State's 4-2 in their last 6 games on the over too. And I don't know, the last 6 games in Baylor have been over, 5 of the last 6. And as you mentioned, 6-0 in the Bears' last 6 games over. So the over's a good play here.
Yeah. I think that's an angle to look at. On the side, if I had to bet this one, I would slightly lean Baylor, but it's tough, right? Like, Mike, I totally understand the points that you're making about Kansas State in this one. I think the margins are a little bit closer in this one. If I had to pick it, I would do Baylor again because of this sort of recent offensive resurgence that they've had. But this is a close one on the side of it. Next game we got at night, and guys, we'll answer your questions again before the end of the episode. So get everyone in that you have, whether you have prop questions, side questions, total, whatever, and we'll get to them before the end of the show. Mike, next game, the marquee SEC tilt, Georgia heading on the road to Mississippi State tonight as a 16.5 point favorite. We got a total in this one in Stark Vegas of 52.5, 7:00 kick. Who do you like in this one, Mike?
Man, I mean, obviously that you assume there's going to be a letdown. It's on the road with cowbells. That number is probably a very accurate number. I'm not sure what your adjusted is to it, but it seems like an accurate number. A lot of people would say this is a potential hangover game and take Mississippi State, but I just feel that this Georgia team is just far and away the best team in the country. After watching what they did against Tennessee, after watching what they can do at will on defense, I think that Georgia is going to cover this game and win it in a rout. Again, Mississippi State, who knows what team's going to show up, but they don't do well in these circumstances when teams can defend against the pass and make them get out of sync. And I think Georgia's going to do that. So give me Georgia, even though it's a large line.
I think you did a really good job there of laying out all the different variables on both sides here. And in large part, because there's so many on both sides, for me, it's a stay away. Officially, my lean in it, if I had to, I would lean towards the home dog. But again, I don't think there's a ton of value here. And it's mostly because my system is pointing towards value on Mississippi State in what is a letdown potential spot for Georgia coming off their big win last week. My line on this game is Georgia minus 13.1. You have a couple different factors going. We were talking about the different variables in the on-field matchup. The Mississippi State defense is weird in that you can move the ball on them sort of freely, like in the middle of the field, but they get really good in the red zone. So it's a key for Mississippi State in this game to force the field goal attempts out of Georgia once they get down there. And then the constitution of the Mississippi State defense, it's also very, strength and weakness, where they have a very good pass defense, including a prime NFL corner on the outside. But Mississippi State's run defense has been mediocre this year. So this is a bad matchup for Stetson Bennett, but it's a good matchup for the Georgia running backs. We'll see how that goes. I'm looking at the overs for the Georgia running backs. The rushing totals is going to be something that I'm sniffing around here. The other thing I want to say is it's on the Mississippi State side, it gets really interesting because Georgia, they have the awesome cornerbacks. They have the awesome secondary. We've seen Georgia take some of these pass happy teams and just totally take them off what they're doing. But Mississippi State, we've seen in the past, they're really good. Even against teams that have good corners, they can beat man coverage. And that's what Georgia plays. You go back to Mike, remember the and I don't mean to equate these teams in any way, but do you remember the opener of the COVID season when Mike Leach played LSU, when LSU had Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks, and KJ Costello broke the record for most SEC passing yards?
Remember he was a first rounder.
Yeah, exactly. But the Mike Leach offense, they have the what do you call man beaters or whatever in there. Like he has the imagination to be able to beat the talent discrepancy even in those sort of situations. We'll see how Georgia can sort of do the counter move to the counter move on that. But you sort of trust that at least a little bit anecdotally. I'm going to lean towards the home dog in this letdown spot for the road favorite in this spot. So
I got a prop.
Points, please.
Yeah, I got a prop in this one because I'm just a stubborn human being. So the Brock Bowers over receiving yards, I don't like. It's 60.5. Honestly, for a guy who gets so much hype, he's had a very pedestrian, disappointing year to me. But because of that, he's plus 155 to score a touchdown in this game as a receiver. He's only caught 3 touchdown passes this season, but that number is plus 155 simply because he hasn't gotten the end zone. I'm going to say match that number. Take your plus number on it. He's going to get in the end zone at least once through the air because eventually he's got to come through. I mean, we had that one week where he met the number at the half with that juggling catch against Florida. And then last week I went, it was last week prop-wise, I thought he was going to get 12 targets. and he caught 3 passes. I'm waiting for a breakout game here, and I think he's going to catch a receiving touchdown. And I wouldn't do this if it was a minus, but if it's a plus, take Brock Bowers to at least score 1 touchdown in the air.
Yeah, and sort of going along with that, like I said, the strength of the Mississippi State defense, it's both the pass defense and in the red zone, but where specifically it's that the good NFL corners, whatever, in the red zone. If Georgia gets into a situation where they have to pass, almost assuredly you are going to be looking for Brock Bowers in the passing game. You're not going to want to throw at the NFL corners.
No, but they don't. But they got to. I mean, come on.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
is a smart kid. Brock Bowers is an instant touchdown. You run a pick play, and get him on a slant or run a fade. I mean, he's got to score today. It's just if he doesn't. I mean, all these people who say Brock Bowers is this, that, and the other. He's not even eligible for the draft yet, and he's going to be a top 5 pick. A year from now in the draft. I get it. He's a phenomenal talent, but utilize him. I'd like to see him use like Notre Dame uses Michael Mayer, and maybe today's the day. So he's going to get in the end zone, I would guess.
I agree. And he could be the trump card to Mississippi State's red zone success, right? I mean, you toss it up to the kid. Mike, our next game, we have another 7:00 kickoff in this one. Interesting Pac-12 game. We're going to get a shootout here. Washington traveling to Oregon. We have a live line in this one of Oregon minus 12.5. Which has been coming down over the last 24 hours. Kind of interesting. Total on this one of 72.5. Who do you like in this one, Mike?
Over. Let me see what the live over is on this one. I mean, this is going to be an absolute shootout. I looked at the props for these, and I do like Bo Nix rushing prop. I think it's 34.5.
Okay.
Again, he continues to hit that number. It's something that you should continue to look at. He and Jaden Daniels have been kind of easy money in that quarterback rushing. The caveat there, of course, is that, sacks count and intentional grounding and all that stuff counts as negative, passing, rushing yards for these guys. But I like that. But when it comes to this game, I don't see a way for either team to stop the other. And it's 73, which sounds like a prohibitive number. It's absolutely not. I mean, this game historically, first of all, Oregon hit the over in their last 5 games at home. The over's 7-3 in Washington's last 10 games. And in this meeting, it's 4-1 in the last 5. This game is always a shootout, and it always goes over. So take the over.
Yeah, with DeBoer, with where this thing has gone, and now with Oregon, I mean, their offense has super duper jumped up here over the last month plus, whatever. This game absolutely profiles as your classic shootout. On the Washington side, my side in this one, I like Washington. It's an official play for me this week. It's in my column. I think I got it at 13.5, but that was a couple of days ago. Now the late money is coming in on Washington with that thing dropping down to live. It's 12 now. So we got but it's still at Washington plus 12. I would take Washington. And the reason why is Oregon's pass defense, everybody talks about how Washington's pass defense stinks. We've talked about that on several episodes going back, Mike, where, they lost so many guys to the NFL and they just weren't able to fill up their secondary, whatever. Oregon's pass defense stinks too. It's just as bad. No, I mean, they absolutely stink. And now Washington has become one of the most pass-happy teams in the entire FBS, also one of the most efficient passing offenses and high-octane and dangerous passing attacks in the entire country. Washington's passing offense ranks number 6 in success rate. You're going up against this Oregon pass defense that's 107th in success rate, 84th in marginal explosiveness against the pass. Michael Penix and crew are going to do whatever they want. I mean, they're going to get all the yards they want. They're going to be a threat to score on every single drive. Now, of course, granted, Oregon is as well because the Washington State, again, their secondary stinks. So Bo Nix is going to have a big game here. People are going to be like, "Oh, Bo Nix, it's going to be another one of those," because he's going to put up bazooka numbers too. But to Mike's very first sentence, I don't see how either of these defenses stops the opposing offense because both of them are going to be able to at least throw at will. So I take the points in what should be a shootout game that comes down to the end, where it could be a who has the ball last kind of a proposition, is how I see it.
What's your thoughts on Roma Duzne?
He's good.
I think he's an over in this game. I mean, it's he's 161, 116, 115, 169. He had 63 yards against Cal, but he's 102 last weekend. My buddy Chife, pointed this one out to me. It's not super low. It's 93.5.
Okay.
But how are you going to stop him? As you mentioned, Oregon has no answer for this kid. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. If he wants to catch 15 passes for 200 yards, he's going to do it. I mean, there's just no stopping him. So he's another prop that I like in this one to go along with the Knicks rushing yards there. And it's going to be a fun game. I mean, that's a late night game. That's going to be fun to watch. It's just going to be a pinball, just a shootout. That and UNC Wake is another one that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, is that the yeah? So okay, we'll go to that one. But on the Washington Oregon one, Mike is on the over. I'm on Washington, but we're both on the passing props on both sides. Like when with those ones, and agree with Mike on Rome. The next game we got here, Wake Forest has moved to a 4.5 point favorite in the market, hosting UNC today. As Mike said, another ridiculous shootout. The total of this game keeps rising. I'm wondering if we're going to see 80 by the time we get to kickoff tonight. Right now, it's at 78.5. Mike, who do you like in this game today? So
that number is so high, that I wanted to take the over because this is going to be, we saw Clemson, Wake Forest, and, this is going to be similar, except Clemson had a defense. Wake Forest doesn't have a defense that could stop anybody. North Carolina has one of the worst defenses known to man. 79 is the over. It's just so high and prohibitive that, if there's a hint of bad weather, you might come under that. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I like UNC. I really think that they're, going to take care of business in this game. They're getting 4.5 live right now on DraftKings. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. Nobody believes they're any good. They've lost one game. Everybody's still remembering the Florida A&M game and the some of the awful play that they had earlier this season. What was it, App State, where they gave up like 61 points? They're trying to prove that they're a legitimate ACC threat. They're going to win that division. They're going to go play Clemson, it looks like. But they've got to get through Wake Forest first. Wake Forest can't stop Drake May. If you want to go passing props here, I wouldn't argue against over 2.5 touchdowns passing for Drake May because I just don't see a way they're going to stop it. So give me UNC. I don't like the over. It's too high, but give me Drake May over 2.5 touchdowns too.
Mike, I remember about like 6 weeks ago or so, it was early in the season and we started to talk about UNC, and you told me the thing about how someone over the offseason around UNC had told you that Drake May is the next Trevor Lawrence. Yep. And I was sort of like, Mike, come on, like that's too early for that stuff. He might be. In fact, like I've heard that one now, outside of that. And I've also heard people are starting to say Justin Herbert, because the fortified build, the monster arm, and how good he is at those downfield shots. Either way, I mean, this kid is going to be a really high draft pick, and we got to see him right out of the box. It's been kind of cool and succeeding right out of that box. He runs that system like a freaking maestro. And credit to Mac Brown, and the coaching staff there, because when they got Sam Howell, he was also able to succeed immediately in a way where you don't see other programs like with 2 true freshman quarterbacks succeeding like back-to-back like this. But Drake May appears to be a better, certainly more talented than Sam Howell, but a better player too at the same time. That offense is super duper dangerous. And yeah, in this game, it gets to sort the passing game of the UN on the UNC side. It gets to tee off on a bad Wake Forest secondary. Wake Forest is marginally better against the run, but they're not a good defense like you were mentioning. UNC's defense is a travesty. It's one of the worst in the Power 5, if not the absolute worst. This number has gotten so high with the total, but my systems adjusted total in this game is 79.5. So it's been interesting as this number is pushed closer and closer to that.
It's going to hit 80. It's going to hit 80.
I think it's going to hit 80 by kick. I think like where, at 78.5, I think my thing here would be a slight lean towards the over on that. As far as the side of it, it's tough because I expect this sets up as the classic sort of roar back, bounce back spot for the Wake Forest offense, which has had some struggles here in recent weeks. Against this, everybody moves the ball on UNC at will. So, I mean, this should be a good game for Hartman. This should be a good game for his running backs, even though they don't run quite as much. Anyone can run on UNC. So, like, you know, you have that going, you know, on the one side, but on the other side, UNC keeps overcoming these spots and stuff like that, and they've been playing better than Wake. So, with where the line is on the side, it's just too hard for me. I'm going to stay away from that, and I'm going to make my lean the over. But really what I'm going to be doing in this game is playing the props. I'm going to be taking the over on the Drake Mays, probably going to be taking over on the Hartmans, and I'm going to be investigating the running back ones too, because neither of the run defenses are great shakes either.
And what's funny about what you said about Drake May, so in this business, right, I talk to a bunch of coaches all the time, and everybody feeds me information about this, that, and the other. This kid's great. What you have to be careful about is what information you choose to regurgitate, right? Because everybody says that this kid's going to be great. You know, oh, this is the year of Sean Clifford, you know, whatever, right? I said the thing about Drake May because I kind of believed in it. But then it was puzzling to me that he'd win it out of the fall. But I realized now that was competition, and the transfer portal played a lot in there. This kid should be the Heisman frontrunner. He's 71% completion rate, 31 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He gets sacked a lot. He's their leading rusher as well with 513 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is unstoppable, and he's getting no Heisman buzz at all, and he should be. So give me Drake May. This is what it comes down to sometimes in games like this where you don't know who's going to win. Give me the better quarterback. Sam Hartman, love you, but you're not even close to Drake May. So give me UNC.
Mike, you got something interesting there. I just looked at the Heisman board. Drake May is plus 1,600, so he's 246. He's 7th on that board. The names ahead of him are not inspiring. CJ Stroud's at the top. CJ Stroud, his ancillary numbers, everything like that, have not been that great this year. Like, I think
worse than May.
Yeah, like, and the counting numbers, of course, worse. But like, I think like Stroud could be heading towards a dud game in one of these, like at the end here against a good defense. We'll see about that. He obviously is not playing one today. But outside of that, Hendon Hooker is still number 2 on this board. I'm finding that one harder to believe after the way that they played against Georgia.
Brand. Heisman crap, man. It's all brand. It's all quarterbacks. You know, Blake Corum should be higher. Drake May should be higher. Caleb Williams, even though USC has a brand, he should be higher. I do have a prop, since we're not going to talk about the Ohio State-Indiana game. The over-under for touchdown passes for CJ Stroud is 3.5. He's going to go over that because I know Ryan Day, and I know the way he thinks. And Stroud's coming off a disappointing game against Northwestern where the grass was 15 inches higher and the wind was 40 miles an hour. He's going to want his QB to bounce back into the Heisman race and become the front runner once again if he's not already. So hammer 3.5 touchdowns or higher for CJ Stroud, but his numbers pale in comparison to Drake May. The Heisman is just garbage. It's absolute garbage. It's just brand names. You look at the guys. Is Bryce Young ahead of Drake May in the Heisman voting?
No, he's not now.
Okay. Well, few.
Yeah.
But Hendon Hooker, CJ Stroud, whoever else is
the others are Caleb Williams, Blake Corum, Bo Nix, and Stetson Bennett. Okay.
So, Blake Corum you can make an argument for, but he's not even the leading rusher in his own conference. So, okay. And you can make a case for Caleb Williams, who's been supremely efficient with the football and can run the ball. But Drake May should be your leader. So, I don't know. But I wouldn't bet it in a million years. I wouldn't take the plus 1,600. He's not going to win it. He could throw 50 touchdowns, 3 picks, rush for like 800 yards, and they won't let him have it.
I don't. You think so? Why?
Because it's brand, man. It's brand. So remember the old days when Andre Ware and those guys used to win Heisman's based on stat stuffing? Yeah. Those days are gone. You're never going to have a team that doesn't get national respect have a Heisman winner. Robert RG3 was probably, I don't know, he was the last one. Am I missing somebody?
That's not
a big brand name guy. I mean, every season it seems the Heisman is a big brand name guy, whether it's a receiver from Alabama or a running back from Alabama or quarterback from Alabama, or it's just the brands just win out. That's just my
Mike, as you know, this is a wonky season. We ain't going to see Alabama in the playoff. We ain't going to see Clemson in the playoff. Like, we're going to see some different stuff here. And I do still think the Heisman race is open because I don't believe in CJ Stroud, like as sort of like a lock. If I was setting the lines, of course I would have to make them the favorite, but I do think the numbers are off on some of the guys lower on down the board. And if UNC wins this game, their last 2 games next week, Mike, get this, they're home against Georgia Tech. May's going to put up monster numbers in that one. And then the last game they host NC State, which, you win out, you're going to finish the regular season 11-1. You're going to be playing in the AC title game. And the numbers will be there for May. I think,
let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen.
Jackson is the last one off brand.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was RG3. But it's been, Florida State, Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, LSU, Alabama. It's become a brand trophy, and it kind of bothers me. So let's start the Drake May. I mean, I just gave you all the numbers.
Let's start it.
He should be number 1. Period.
16-1. If they finish 11-1, play in the ACC title game, and then he finishes with the numbers that you just extrapolated out, Mike. 2,964 passing yards for Drake May this year on 71.2% completions, 9.5 yards per attempt, 31-3 TDI and T ratio. He has 181.8 quarterback rating. And not only that, folks, Drake also leads UNC in running by over 100 yards. He had 513 rushing yards with 4 touchdowns, and that's even with sack yardage omitted. It's crazy.
Well, here's the other thing. CJ Stroud plays a tougher level of competition. Well, they played Notre Dame, and so did UNC. And their best win is essentially Penn State. Now, UNC's played App State and Virginia Tech and Miami and Duke and Virginia, but Pitt's not a horrible team. The competition level is not exponentially higher for CJ Stroud or for Caleb Williams than it is for Drake May. And that's the argument against him. But his numbers are ridiculous. He should win it. I'm just saying.
I like it. I'm with you, Mike. Drake May 16-1, and on the side of the game I lean the over, and Mike leans towards the underdog UNC. 2 more games for you guys, and then we'll let you out here in about 15 minutes. But we will answer your questions before we do. So any ones that you have, get them into the chat quick. Mike, we got to roll through these ones a little bit quicker so we can get to those questions. We were yapping a little bit too much, but
yeah.
TCU is a 7-point underdog heading into Austin tonight to play Texas. Total on this game is 65.5 with a 7:30 kick. Who do you like in this one?
Go Frogs. I like they're a good matchup against Texas. I think they play Texas well. They're 4-1 in their last 5 meetings in Texas, 6-2 in their last 8 meetings overall against Texas, 7-1-1 against the spread in their last 9 games overall. They always hit the spread. They may fall behind, but they're always going to come back. They have a better balanced offense, and Texas I still don't trust. So give me TCU.
Mike, you mentioned a lot of those games where it's like somebody knows something. I'm surprised you didn't say it in this one because this is like one of the more suspicious ones. Yeah.
But then I would take Texas because it's such a dumb spread. But I'm going with my eyes instead of what Vegas knows in this because this is a dumb spread. Dumb.
And this stat comes from your boy, the Bear at ESPN. This is the largest spread for a team with 3+ losses. Or I'm sorry, the largest a team with 3+ losses has been favored over a 9-0 or better team ever.
In Texas.
Ever.
Somebody knows something. I'm telling you. But listen, I bet against TCU how many times this season saying that this is going to be the week that they get exposed. There's no exposing. They're a better balanced team. They're going to win.
We'll have to see on the status of Quentin Johnston. He's a game time decision.
That kid is an animal. He's going to play 100%. Trust me.
He is very, very good. TCU's benefited from some quarterback injuries this year. We'll see what happens tonight. I think I would lean Texas in that game, but it's a tough one with how high that line is. And Mike, the last one we're going to discuss before we get to audience questions again is Florida State traveling to Syracuse tonight. Florida State is a 7-point favorite. I think live, we'll have to check that. At least they were when we were coming on to record. The total on this game is 50.5. A game that is the handicap is very predicated on whether Garrett Schrader is going to play or not for Syracuse. We've seen sort of conflicting reports, and you have to sort of go to the reports because Dino Babers has not addressed that one this week. With all that in mind, Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like Syracuse. I mean, it's at home. Florida State's coming off a rivalry game where they just throttled Miami. They're going to play a little bit down to competition. I still like the Syracuse defense to keep this close. I don't think they're going to win the football game, but you give me 7 at the whatever dome it's called now for a team that can play defense against a Florida State team coming off a rivalry win. I'll take Syracuse.
It's the air conditioning something or other. I forget. Thomas would be so upset with us if he was still
cool.
here. I know.
It's not our job to know these names.
Yeah, they switch it so much.
Carrier dome.
It's a carrier dome to us. Yeah, that's what it is. If Schrader's playing, of course you got to lean towards taking the points with the home dog. That's what I would do. It's just hard because you don't know if Schrader's going to play or not. And if it's Carlos Del Rio again, and now you got to go with Carlos Del Rio, and you're only getting 7 points against Florida State, that's when it's like, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm getting enough points with what we've seen at that the Florida State offense in recent weeks. They've been putting points on the board. So that's where it gets tough for me. I think if Schrader plays for Syracuse, they're able to be multiple. They're able to keep the Florida State defensive play callers off the beat of their scent, and doing the different stuff, the sideline to sideline passing game, that now you're opening up the explosive runs for Tucker. Schrader's getting you the efficiency on the ground, but without him, all that stuff sort of goes away. Right. And then you just become the straightforward offense that's just praying for a Sean Tucker home run. And then it's like pray for rain on the other plays or whatever. So again, this one for me is entirely predicated on Schrader's status. If he's playing and the line is 7 or above, I'm taking Syracuse. If Schrader's not, this is a total stay away from me, or Florida State if you had to.
I think the line speaks to him not playing. I mean, I don't see how it could be, plus 7.5 at home if he is playing. You weren't impressed with Del Rio and 8 for 23 last week?
I was not. No, he left a little bit to be desired, especially Mike, playing in a Robert Anaya offense, the completion percentage is almost built in for you. So it's like,
I could complete 60% passes in that offense,
I think you could.
Whatever. I mean, this was a kid
with me as your wide receiver 1.
Supposed to be a 4-star out of high school, though. Don't forget. Whatever. He's not good. I get it. I just like the defense. I think the defense. Plus, like I said, Florida State's feeling themselves. They just had an emotional high. And what happens after an emotional high? A low. So I just like Syracuse. And then line 7.5 now. If it got below 7, I wouldn't touch it, but it's going to get up probably to 8. So I like Syracuse.
That's it. That's interesting. That I don't know if that's just speculation or
be out. I mean, I just looked for the latest on it.
Yeah,
there's no word, but he's got to be out. That line wouldn't be as attractive.
Yeah, that's interesting with because the money today it should be indicative of what the market is expecting of that. But we'll have to see. Like that's one where you just have to monitor the reports today, and if you get a good indication that Schrader might be playing, whatever, or if not. Mike, let's jump into a question before we get out of here. If we got any, okay. First one, Mike, comes to us from Keith Dubs. Hi, Keith. He said, he said he got into the stream late today. He said, Did he miss the TCU Texas thoughts?
He got in time. He got in time.
Oh, that was before. Okay.
That was before you. Yep. He heard us.
We got you, Keith. Okay. 2K asks us Miami against Georgia Tech. It seems to me like Miami should be the favorite and beat Georgia Tech straight up, but Miami is a 1.5 underdog. Is this spread off and is Miami the actual take here, or is there something up that I'm not seeing?
What's up to me?
It's Tim Tebow.
Hold on. It's Tim Tebow talking. Up to me is Miami's just a horrible, horrible football team, and they really don't have a quarterback. They really don't. I mean, Van Dyke's not going to play. We saw him go out of the game last week again.
Oh, is he okay? Is he confirmed out?
Imagine he's going to play. I mean, I haven't
looking it up right now.
Yeah, look it up right now. But there's no way he's going out there. And then there's a formidable drop in talent and ability at the quarterback position. This team is in flux. There's going to be a lot of guys hitting the portal. There's going to be a lot of guys coming in from the portal. There's going to be a lot of recruiting that's being done on a great job of recruiting. Miami's just an awful football team, just a really, really bad football team. So I think that's why the line is here. You look at it and you're like, Georgia Tech has an interim coach. They're not good. They haven't been good in a long time. Why is Miami getting points? Well, Miami stinks. They're just really bad. And it's going to take a couple of years for Mario Cristobal to get that thing going, and it's not going to be this Saturday.
Mike, 20 minutes ago, Pete Thamel of ESPN reported that Tyler Van Dyke will be out today with his shoulder injury.
I think he's out for the year. That's my thought. It's a shoulder. And I think he wants to come back next season. He's certainly not going to go to the draft.
Yeah, he ain't going to get drafted. I don't think after that.
I think Garcia is more likely to go in the portal than Van Dyke. So I think he's just going to save himself for next season, and they're just going to start over.
Man, that Garcia kid, it's not looked great when he's been in. The over the course of the entire thing, he's 48 for 82, 58.5% completion percentage, a 2-4 TD INT rate. He's been sacked 9 times. His QBR is 19.3. Yeah. Not giving you any rushing utility. Like he was a decent recruit as well, Mike, as you know. But like I don't know if he's just too green right now or if he just doesn't got it. But the offense is not interesting with Garcia in whereas it does, like the upside of it is there when Van Dyke is playing. We've seen a couple games this year, they flashed that, but without him, that gets tough. And Mike, as you know, it's not just Van Dyke on that team. Miami's been decimated with injuries all season. The offensive line has been particularly bad. That was an area of that team heading into this season where I was sort of hanging my hat on for Miami. It's like Cristobal has been a trench-obsessed coach, both, like in terms of the way that he coaches, but also in his recruiting preference, like what he goes after, whatever. And on this team, he seemed to have it. He seemed to have a really good offensive line. He had the left tackle was a potential first-round pick, and you had all these other NFL prospects on there, and the defensive line looked good. But the offensive line has been decimated with injuries all year. That Zion Nelson kid, we've barely seen him. They've had multiple other guys that have been out. There's been numerous games where they've had at least 3 starting offensive linemen out. I believe they're going to have a couple that are out today as well, and then other positions as well. That's what makes it tough on the Miami side, because it's like you got to go into battle with this, your backup quarterback who's never done anything. He's behind a bad offensive line. Their skill talent isn't very good, and they also have leaks on the defense. I don't trust Georgia Tech either at all, but it's like it's tough with where Miami's sitting right now, and you wonder, is Miami on the precipice of quitting, whereas Georgia Tech, surprisingly, I think they could, like right now, I don't think they've been eliminated from bowl season because they've won a couple of these games that they weren't expected to. I believe that Georgia Tech 4-5. So Georgia Tech could stunningly rally into bowl season, but to do it, they would have to beat Miami today. And then here's where it gets hard. The last 2 games of their season, at UNC, at Georgia, you probably aren't going to beat Georgia, but at least you can keep the dream alive of potentially upsetting UNC and their, Matador defense next week to potentially, do that or whatever. But Georgia Tech, they still have that sort of, that goal is still on the line, and they're still giving effort. Last week, Georgia Tech went to Blacksburg and beat Virginia Tech. And early on, right after they had fired Jeff Collins, you had the huge upset where it was against Pittsburgh. It's a 14.5 point underdog, I think. They beat them by 5, and then the next week they upset Duke as well. So you've already had numerous 3 different upsets on the Georgia Tech side. That one's tough for me. Like I'm not going to touch it, but I understand why Georgia Tech is favored.
All right, we got to hammer through these next ones. We got 3 minutes.
Okay.
So
we only got
Cam Rising rush yards 24.5 looks juicy. If you can get it, get it. DraftKings doesn't have it. If you can get Cam Rising over 24.5 rushing yards against Stanford, take it. That's my take.
I'm down with that. Mike Huseman says, this question is to renew Mike Farrell's faith in me. Florida State -7 at Syracuse. You got okay. So we did talk about that one. 2K says, what about Farrell's home state team that he can't bet? UConn versus. I love this. Thank you for asking.
Liberty.
Okay. UConn against Liberty. Huskies are at home, noon start, 13.5 point underdog. You're taking Liberty. Okay, for me, it's the under in that game.
He's interviewing for the Auburn job. Liberty.
Jim Morris?
No, Hugh Freeze.
Oh, Hugh Freeze. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, I'm taking the under in that one. Both those teams can tackle well. Mike Huseman says Kansas +3.5 in Lubbock today, playing Texas Tech. He says we know who Thor likes in that game. Who do you like, Mike?
I'd take Kansas too, for you. Just for you.
Rock chalk, baby. Sam Young says, quick thoughts on the Buckeyes game. 40 points is too many. It doesn't seem like they covered that often. Is there any good play on this game? Mike, you had mentioned a couple before. You want to remind me?
There's no good play on this game. I would take Ohio State if you have to, because CJ is going to put up Heisman numbers, but Trevion Henderson's out. Indiana is horrible, but 40 points is too much to lay. I wouldn't touch it.
And with that, we have run out of time. We're about to turn into pumpkins. Kickoff is upon us. For Mike Farrell, I'm Thor Nystrom. We both want to thank our title sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Please take advantage of their special offer today and be sure to use your promo code CFB Pros for a free $50 bet if you deposit $5 with it to open up your new account. Good luck today on everybody with your bets and enjoy another glorious day of college football.